Life does not arrive wrapped in comfort or fairness. It arrives demanding courage, endurance, and truth. It will test your bones, stretch your faith, and ask you to stand tall when your knees want to fold. Pain will visit, disappointment will speak loudly, and the road will feel heavier than you ever imagined. Yet within that hardness lives a deeper strength, forged by every tear you refuse to let define you. You are not here to be spared. You are here to rise, to endure, to learn how to carry your scars with grace, dignity, and an unbreakable sense of self-worth that refuses to be erased. Accepting hardship as a teacher rather than a punishment is a mindset that transforms suffering into strength and pain into progress. Life does not single people out for struggle. Difficulty is a universal experience that shapes character and reveals truth. When hardship is seen as punishment, it breeds resentment, victimhood, and helplessness. When it is seen as a teacher, it becomes a source of clarity, discipline, and inner growth. Every challenge carries a lesson, even when it arrives without warning or explanation. Hardship exposes weaknesses that comfort keeps hidden. It forces reflection, adaptation, and resilience. Through difficulty, you learn what truly matters, who you can rely on, and what you are capable of enduring. Pain sharpens awareness. It strips away illusion and demands honesty about effort, choices, and priorities. Accepting hardship does not mean enjoying suffering or seeking pain. It means recognizing its role in shaping strength and wisdom. Struggle builds endurance by pushing limits that once seemed immovable. Each time you endure something difficult, your threshold for resilience expands. What once overwhelmed you becomes manageable, and what once broke you becomes a source of confidence. Hardship teaches patience because growth rarely happens on a comfortable timeline. It teaches humility by reminding you that control is limited and effort is essential. It teaches discipline by demanding consistency even when motivation disappears. Accepting hardship as a teacher also reframes failure. Setbacks become feedback rather than proof of inadequacy. Mistakes become instruction rather than condemnation. This shift allows learning to occur without self-hate or defeat. Hardship reveals character. Under pressure, values surface, habits are tested, and true priorities emerge. In comfort, it is easy to pretend. In struggle, authenticity is unavoidable. Accepting hardship builds emotional strength. Instead of reacting impulsively or collapsing under stress, you learn to respond with composure and clarity. Emotional control develops when you face discomfort without escape. This control becomes a source of quiet power that stabilizes decisions and actions. Hardship also teaches gratitude by contrast. When ease returns, it is recognized rather than taken for granted. Perspective deepens, and appreciation becomes grounded rather than superficial. Accepting hardship cultivates independence. You learn that rescue is rare and self-reliance is essential. This realization strengthens confidence and self-trust because survival and progress are tied to your own effort. Hardship also strengthens boundaries. It teaches when to say no, when to walk away, and when to stand firm. Pain clarifies limits and reinforces self-respect. When hardship is accepted as instruction, bitterness is replaced by understanding. You stop asking why life is difficult and start asking what it is teaching. This shift changes behavior, attitude, and identity. Hardship becomes a refining process rather than a breaking point. It chisels patience, sharpens focus, and forges resilience. Each difficult experience becomes a chapter of earned wisdom rather than a scar of resentment. Over time, the lessons accumulate, shaping a person who is grounded, capable, and unshaken by adversity. Accepting hardship as a teacher allows you to walk through life with strength instead of fear, clarity instead of confusion, and purpose instead of bitterness, turning struggle into a source of growth, dignity, and inner power. Building strength through pain and resistance is an unavoidable truth of growth because nothing meaningful is forged in comfort. Pain is not an interruption to progress, it is the process itself. Resistance is the force that reveals capacity, sharpens endurance, and separates who you are from who you could become. When life applies pressure, it is not trying to destroy you, it is testing the limits you have accepted for yourself. Avoided pain weakens character, but faced pain refines it. Every difficult moment challenges the body, the mind, and the spirit to adapt, endure, and rise. Resistance demands effort, and effort builds strength. Muscles grow by tearing and rebuilding stronger. The mind grows by being pushed beyond familiar limits. The soul grows by surviving moments it once believed it could not endure. Pain exposes fragility, but it also uncovers resilience hidden beneath comfort. Each time you confront resistance, instead of escaping it, you train yourself to stand firm under pressure. This training reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as fragile and begin to recognize your capacity to endure. Strength built through pain is authentic because it is earned. It is not borrowed from motivation, praise, or circumstances. It is carved through repetition, struggle, and persistence. Resistance also sharpens focus. When things are difficult, distractions lose their appeal, priorities become clear, and energy is directed towards survival and progress rather than indulgence. Pain strips away illusion. It reveals where discipline is weak, where effort is lacking, and where excuses have been hiding. Facing this truth is uncomfortable, but it is necessary for growth. Strength does not come from avoiding hardship. It comes from meeting it directly, learning from it, and continuing forward despite it. Resistance builds mental toughness. When discomfort is no longer feared, control over emotion increases. You learn to act even when motivation is absent, to think clearly under pressure, and to remain steady when circumstances are unstable. This mental strength becomes a foundation for confidence because it proves that you can rely on yourself when things are hard. Pain also builds patience. Progress through resistance is slow, demanding, and often unrewarded in the short term. Enduring this process teaches long-term thinking and resilience. It conditions you to keep going without immediate validation. Resistance builds self-respect. Every time you choose effort over escape, discipline over indulgence, and courage over comfort, you reinforce your own worth. Strength grows not from the absence of struggle, but from the refusal to surrender to it. Pain also teaches humility. It reminds you that growth requires effort, that mastery takes time, and that no one is exempt from struggle. This humility grounds strength, preventing arrogance and reinforcing discipline. Resistance transforms weakness into capability. What once felt impossible becomes manageable through repeated exposure and effort. Each challenge expands tolerance for discomfort, making future obstacles less intimidating. Strength built through pain is transferable. The resilience learned in one area carries into others, shaping how you handle relationships, failure, responsibility, and uncertainty. This strength is quiet but undeniable. It does not announce itself. It is revealed through calm persistence and unwavering effort. Over time, Pain becomes familiar, resistance becomes expected, and strength becomes habitual. You stop asking for ease and start trusting your ability to endure. The struggle no longer defines you as weak, it defines you as capable. Through repeated confrontation with pain and resistance, identity shifts from avoidance to endurance, from fear to resilience, from limitation to power, shaping a person who stands firm regardless of difficulty and moves forward with unbreakable resolve built through hardship and effort. Stopping the expectation that life will be fair is a turning point in personal strength, because fairness is not a promise life makes, and clinging to that expectation creates constant disappointment, resentment, and paralysis. Life distributes challenges, opportunities, pain, and privilege unevenly, without explanation or apology. When you expect fairness, every obstacle feels like an injustice, every setback feels personal, and every struggle feels undeserved. This mindset drains energy and traps you in comparison and bitterness. Releasing the expectation of fairness does not mean becoming cold or hopeless. It means becoming realistic, resilient, and empowered. It allows you to shift focus from what should have been given to what must now be built. When fairness is no longer expected, responsibility replaces entitlement. You stop waiting for circumstances to improve and start adapting to what is. This shift restores control because progress becomes dependent on effort rather than conditions. Life becomes less about judgment and more about strategy. You begin to ask not why this happened to you, but how you will respond to it. That question is where strength is formed. Expecting fairness weakens resilience because it creates shock when hardship arrives. Accepting unfairness prepares you mentally for resistance, loss, and challenge. When difficulty appears, it no longer feels like betrayal. It feels like reality. This mental preparedness allows calm under pressure and clearer decision making. You conserve emotional energy by no longer arguing with reality. Instead of resenting what you cannot change, you invest effort into what you can control. This shift sharpens focus and builds discipline. Letting go of fairness also reduces comparison. Fairness invites constant measurement against others, their advantages, their timelines, and their outcomes. Comparison erodes confidence and distracts from personal progress. When you accept that life is unequal, you stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against your own potential and effort. This creates inner stability and self-respect. Growth accelerates when energy is no longer wasted on resentment. Accepting unfairness also builds gratitude. When ease, opportunity, or success appears, it is no longer assumed. It is recognized as something earned, seized, or survived toward. Perspective deepens, and appreciation becomes grounded rather than entitled. This perspective strengthens character. It teaches humility when things go well and resilience when they do not. Stopping the expectation of fairness also sharpens ambition. When you know nothing is guaranteed, effort becomes non-negotiable. You work harder, prepare longer, and commit deeper because outcomes are not promised. This urgency fuels discipline and consistency. Fairness encourages passivity. Acceptance of unfairness encourages action. It forces you to become resourceful, adaptable, and mentally tough. Life's unevenness becomes a training ground rather than an excuse. You begin to see struggle not as proof of failure, but as part of the cost of becoming stronger. This mindset builds emotional maturity. You stop seeking validation through sympathy and start seeking progress through effort. Complaints lose their appeal because they do not change outcomes. Responsibility replaces blame, and growth replaces stagnation. Accepting that life is not fair also strengthens boundaries. You stop expecting others to understand, compensate, or rescue you. This independence builds confidence and self-trust. You learn to rely on your own effort, judgment, and resilience. The world becomes less personal and more practical. When life hits hard, you do not collapse under the weight of unmet expectations. You adapt, adjust, and move forward. Letting go of fairness does not harden you, it steadies you. It removes illusion and replaces it with clarity. You stop negotiating with reality and start working with it. Strength grows when expectations align with truth, and truth is that life is difficult, unequal, and unpredictable. Accepting this reality frees you from resentment and prepares you to build strength, dignity, and resilience in a world that owes nothing but responds to effort, persistence, and unyielding resolve. Rising with dignity despite struggle is a choice that defines character when circumstances attempt to strip it away. Struggle has a way of pressing on the weakest points, exposing fear, frustration, and despair. Yet dignity is what determines how you carry yourself through that pressure. Dignity is not the absence of pain, it is composure in the presence of it. It is the refusal to let hardship turn you bitter, cruel, or small. When life is harsh, dignity becomes an act of quiet rebellion against chaos, a declaration that circumstances may wound you, but they will not own you. Struggle often invites anger, blame, and collapse, but dignity demands restraint, self-respect, and inner control. It asks you to stand upright even when exhausted, to speak with integrity even when unheard, and to act with principle even when the world offers no reward. Rising with dignity does not mean suppressing emotion, it means mastering it. Pain can be acknowledged without being broadcast, and suffering can be endured without being weaponized against yourself or others. This mastery builds strength because it preserves energy for survival and progress rather than wasting it on resentment or despair. Dignity protects identity. When everything else feels unstable, how you carry yourself becomes the one thing you can control. Struggle may take comfort, certainty, and ease, but it cannot take your standards unless you surrender them. Rising with dignity reinforces self-respect because each composed response proves that your values are not conditional on convenience. It teaches emotional discipline, the ability to pause rather than react, to choose response over impulse. This discipline becomes a shield in moments of humiliation, loss, or failure. Dignity also reshapes perception. When you face hardship with calm resolve, others may not always understand, but respect often follows, quietly and naturally. More importantly, you begin to respect yourself. This self-respect becomes a source of strength that no external validation can replace. Rising with dignity also means refusing to become hardened or cruel. Struggle can tempt you to justify bitterness, but dignity insists on humanity, compassion, and fairness, even when life has been unfair to you. This does not make you weak, it makes you formidable. It shows that hardship has not corrupted your core. Dignity creates clarity in chaos. When everything feels overwhelming, maintaining principles simplifies decisions. You act according to values rather than emotion, which preserves direction and focus. This clarity allows you to keep moving forward without losing yourself in the process. Rising with dignity also builds resilience. Each moment you choose composure over collapse strengthens emotional endurance. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes survivable, and what once shook you becomes manageable. Dignity also teaches patience. Progress through struggle is slow, uncertain, and often invisible. Maintaining self-respect through this process prevents desperation and recklessness. It keeps effort steady rather than frantic. Rising with dignity does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means accepting reality without surrendering integrity. It is the strength to endure without degrading yourself, to fight without losing your values, and to suffer without abandoning your sense of self. When struggle passes, dignity remains, and it becomes the proof that you were not only strong enough to survive, but grounded enough to remain whole while doing so. Turning suffering into self-respect is a profound transformation that occurs when pain is no longer allowed to define your worth, but instead becomes proof of your endurance, courage, and inner strength. Suffering is unavoidable in life, yet its impact depends on how it is interpreted and carried. When suffering is internalized as failure or weakness, it erodes confidence and identity. When it is reframed as evidence of survival and growth, it becomes a source of self-respect. Self-respect is built when you acknowledge what you have endured without diminishing yourself or seeking pity. It grows when you recognize that pain did not erase you, silence you, or break your values. Every hardship survived becomes a testament to resilience. Turning suffering into self-respect requires honesty. It means facing pain without denial, excuses, or self-deception. You acknowledge what hurt, what was lost, and what changed, while refusing to let those experiences define you as lesser. This honesty strengthens character because it replaces shame with understanding and self-blame with accountability. Suffering endured with awareness deepens self-knowledge. You learn your limits, your fears, and your capacity to continue despite them. This awareness becomes empowering rather than humiliating. Self-respect also emerges when you stop explaining your pain to those who cannot understand it. Silence becomes strength when you no longer seek validation for what you endured. You know what it cost you to survive, and that knowledge becomes enough. Turning suffering into self-respect requires boundaries. Pain teaches you what you will no longer tolerate, where you must protect your energy, and when to walk away. Each boundary set is an act of honoring yourself. Suffering also refines values. It clarifies what matters, what is worth effort, and what is no longer acceptable. When values are strengthened through hardship, self-respect becomes grounded and stable rather than fragile or performative. Enduring pain without abandoning integrity builds quiet confidence. You may not feel strong in the moment, but each decision to keep your standards intact reinforces dignity. Suffering tests character by tempting bitterness, cruelty, and self-neglect. Choosing restraint, compassion, and discipline in these moments transforms pain into proof of inner authority. Self-respect is also built when you stop using suffering as an excuse to stagnate or self-destruct. Pain may explain behavior, but it does not justify abandoning responsibility for growth. Choosing to continue forward, even slowly, reinforces belief in your own worth. Each step taken despite pain strengthens trust in yourself. Turning suffering into self-respect also requires patience. Healing is not linear, and strength does not arrive all at once. Allowing yourself time without self-judgment preserves dignity. You respect yourself by honoring your pace rather than comparing your recovery to others. Suffering also teaches humility. It reminds you that strength is earned, not assumed, and that resilience is developed through effort rather than entitlement. This humility grounds self-respect in reality rather than ego. Over time, suffering reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who was harmed and start seeing yourself as someone who endured. This shift alters how you speak, how you carry yourself, and how you make decisions. Pain becomes part of your story, not the definition of it. Self-respect grows when you recognize that surviving hardship required courage, persistence, and strength you did not know you possessed. Turning suffering into self-respect transforms wounds into wisdom, endurance into confidence, and pain into a quiet source of power that shapes how you move through the world with dignity, resilience, and an unshakable sense of self-worth that does not require validation or approval from anyone else.